Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live webinar. We are demystifying the Delta Plus variant for you, and helping us do that are three doctors who will be taking your questions as well at around 4:20, which is in the next 20 minutes. I'll put some questions to them, try and demystify the Delta Plus variant. And then if you have any questions for them, you can, of course, put them to us and we'll put them to them. Dr. Tarun Sahani is a specialist of internal medicine at the Indraprastha Hospital. He is joining us. Dr. Sahani, thank you very much. Dr. M.S. Kanwar is a senior consultant, Department of Pulmonology, Critical Care and Sleep Medicine, again at the Indraprastha Apollo Hospital. He's joining us as well. Dr. Kanwar, welcome. And Dr. Pradeep Seth is a virologist, also the former head of microbiology at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. He's joining us as well on the broadcast. So three doctors here on the panel, and doctors, we have promised our viewers that in case you have any questions regarding the Delta Plus, or frankly, even the Delta variant, we'd be happy to answer them, that you'd be happy to answer them. Dr. Pradeep Seth, let me come to you first. Data that is now emerging and the study that is now emerging after genome sequencing seems to suggest that Delta Plus may not be as dangerous, transmissible, etc., as the Delta variant. What do we know about that, sir?
See, frankly speaking, there is a Delta Plus variant is very similar to Delta. Plus, it has got it has got one particular mutation which has occurred in 417 position. However, according to my view, that particular mutation which occurred at RBD, that receptor bindings domain at 411 site, that is where one particular amino acid is replaced. That is, your lysine is replaced by asparagine, and that reduces the charges. So, according to me, this should not be as transmissible as the previous one. Although it has got the same properties, it does not score over Delta. It is similar to Delta, but it doesn't score anything more than that. Delta variant is already spread all over the world, Delta, and Delta Plus variant may not cause much difference as far as the transmissibility is concerned, according to my reading, because the charges are similar as what because see what happens whenever there is a change in amino acid from one to another. Hydrophilic, it becomes hydrophilic. That is, binding capacity to the receptor increases. But here the binding capacity is almost the same as Delta to the receptor which are present in the nasal, in the respiratory tract. So according to my understanding, it is not very highly transmissible as compared to Delta. So we should not be
that is some good news coming in. Dr. Sahani, we do understand that the Delta variant, the parent of Delta Plus, is already spread to 111 countries. The Delta variant is something that has driven the second wave here in India. The WHO, and is now driving a massive wave and a massive surge in Indonesia, which has become the epicenter of coronavirus in Asia, replacing India. Is it your view, given what science is now telling us, given what Dr. Pradeep Seth is now telling us, Delta Plus variant may not be as much of a concern as the Delta variant was? Should we be breathing a sigh of relief, or Delta or Delta Plus, or the Sardar is still there and a third wave is still coming?
I would go with what you said in the end. See, what is the Delta variant? What is it going to be? Is it more severe or is it more transmissible? Is one part of the story. But at a social level, I think as a community, we cannot take the Delta Plus as anything lighter than the Delta which caused havoc, during the second wave. So irrespective of what the virologists say, whatever the research studies suggest that it's a Delta 1 or a Delta Alpha, Delta Lambda kind of a variant, I think socially we need to take the same amount of precautions as if we are dealing with the most severe virus and its most severe form. Secondly, the more the virus transmits, the more is the number of mutations which will take place. So maybe the Delta Plus is not so severe, it's more transmissible, but maybe the next variant which comes in could be extremely severe. So the precautions at a social level we need to take irrespective of the severity and irrespective of the transmissibility. Similarly, as healthcare workers, as people who work in hospitals across the country, across the world, I think we need to be equally prepared. And we don't know when the Delta Plus will become a Delta double plus, which is absolutely lethal. And the precautions, both socially as healthcare workers, need to be taken into account, and we need to be equally careful, irrespective of whether it is severe or not, whether it is more transmissible or not. So the precautions have to be there on the ground.
May I add one thing
what
here?
you're saying, go ahead, sir.
What he said is very correctly. See, whether it is whatever that virus is there, one thing we have to wear the mask. That's the only way that transmissibility has to stop. Otherwise, there's no way the transmission can be stopped. Okay, and if the more it replicates, more it's R, that is R factor, that is reproduction factor, R factor. If it goes beyond, as it's about 2 in India. If it goes around 2, that means transmissibility is very high. We have to reduce it to less than 1, and that can only be by wearing mask. That's the only way.
So
and that is why
what you're saying, Dr. Seth, could you explain to people who are joining us what this R factor is and what it means about the transmissibility of the virus, please?
R factor means is a reproduction factor. We call it, that is transmissibility from a primary host to a secondary host. That is transmissibility. If a primary host can transmit to more than 2 or 3 patients, two persons, this means that from 1 person it went to 2 persons. That is transmissibility. That's a factor. That's a factor which is derived, and that means that that particular person can transmit to more, and that it becomes a geometrical progression. Meaning thereby, supposing I am a primary host.
So which means if your R factor is 1,
yeah.
If your R factor is 1, it means you are infecting 1 more person. If your R factor is about 2, as is what India is registering, then every 1 person is infecting 2 people. And then, of course, that continues to multiply.
Yes, exactly. And it has to, I'll give you one example. Okay. Influenza virus, for example, influenza virus 1918 epidemic. We do not know what we have calculated. We can calculate from the data. The R factor there was 1.7, and that caused a lot of damage. And the 2009 influenza epidemic, the R factor was 0.69. So that did not spread that much in 2009. Whereas now here the R factor is 2. It varied from 2.5 to 2.9. And that is why this coronavirus 2 has caused so much damage. You can see the world over.
Okay. Dr. Karwar, as a practicing physician, are you seeing an uptick in the number of cases that are coming to you? I ask you this because, once again, while the numbers have, of course, dramatically come down from the peak, the numbers are slowly climbing. We are reporting some 40,000 cases every day, and 2 states, Maharashtra and Kerala, have become particularly worrisome. In your hospital, are you seeing maybe slightly more cases come up, say, compared to a week ago or 2 weeks ago?
Hardly significant. In fact, Delhi is still spared. Maharashtra, Kerala, and those places are another story. Even Andhra and Tamil Nadu are quite, in fact, still more and more cases coming up there. But when you talk of the clinical presentation of cases, it has been no more severe than Delta. If it is Delta plus, unless they do the sequencing, we wouldn't know about that, what we are dealing with. But the numbers, for example, in the last 10 days or so, the number of hospitalized cases in our Indraprastha Hospital has gone up from 1, 2, 3 to 7. It was not like jumping from 1 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 200 within a week, 300 cases. No, in 10 days, if it has gone from 1 admission to 7 admissions, I think, and one of them is being discharged. So 6 cases. That means we are not seeing any load. This is just a little sporadic thing. And even in the outpatient or the video consults that people do, I think we are still in a very subdued phase. So hopefully, let's hope it stays like that. And my feeling is, even if the third wave comes, it probably will come. There are many reasons for that to explain that out, whether it's A1.5, AY.1, which is Delta plus, or any of the other lineages of Delta, which are A1, AY1, AY2, AY3. And there could be something else happening. While we are talking, there could be more variations happening, more mutations happening. And as Dr. Said said, the worrisome is K417, N mutation, which is more deadly and more transmissible. So even if the third wave comes, I feel it will be subdued. It will be subdued and probably a little more prolonged. People have learned their lesson the second time around, and they have seen the mortality. Every household in the country, especially in urban India, has lost some 1 or 2 relatives, near or distant relatives, this time around. So they have learned their lesson, and the moment the curve starts to go up, I believe all those people who are roaming around in the malls and celebrating, they would immediately come to terms with a new reality which might hit them. So they'll be more careful regarding masking, distancing, and sanitization.
Dr. Sahni, do you agree with Dr. Kanwar? I ask you this question because of the sort of pictures that we are seeing come out from hills of northern India, Mussoorie, Dharamshala, Nainital, etc., absolutely jam-packed with tourists. The fact is that even if you want to enter these hill stations, you're meeting with traffic jams. That's the sort of, that's the sort of movement that we are seeing. A lot of people are calling this revenge travel. They're saying for 18 months, people have not been able to travel, so this is revenge travel. Given the pictures that you have seen come out from hill stations in northern India, and by the way, just some southern Indian hill stations as well, do you think people have learned their lessons?
I really don't think they've learned their lessons. And one, of course, is this revenge travel, which everyone's talking about. And then there's this famous movie called Zindagi Na Mile Dobara. So people are saying, yeah, we don't know what the hell is going to happen, so you might as well enjoy whatever time is left, So it's a combination of absolute recklessness and complete disregard for any kind of safety. Having, like what Dr. Kanwar said, I'm sure anybody in urban India, if not immediately close, your next door neighbor has lost somebody, or 3 houses down the line, but that hasn't changed anyone. So either people are reckless and saying we don't know how long we've got to live, so we might as well enjoy ourselves, or on the other side, there is just too much of fatigue which has set in of being locked in. But it's definitely not good. And like we said, the more the virus replicates, the more variations are going to come in, and there's going to be a much more lethal virus which might emerge in this replication, and we really need to take precautions to prevent that from happening.
Dr. Kanwar, since you're treating patients, I want to ask you this. Have you seen a difference in symptoms in people who are coming with the Delta variant / the Delta plus variant? The simple question is there a difference in symptoms, and do you even get to know whether the person, the virus is Delta or whether it's Delta plus? Do doctors really get to know when patients come to them?
There are hardly any Delta plus cases in India. Delta plus, so far, till 3 days ago, 61 cases were recorded in India. And most of them were from Maharashtra, from Madhya Pradesh, and 3 of them died. 2 of them died in Madhya Pradesh. So looking at that, you might think that, mortality of 5%. which is far in excess of 2%, roughly 2% that Delta had, and about 1.23% that the Wuhan virus, the original Wuhan virus had. You might think like that, but the global data so far does not support that it is more virulent or even more transmissible, as my colleagues have said.
Right.
So since we don't have much data on Delta Plus, and we have not sequenced probably even a single case from Delhi of Delta Plus, then obviously we are not talking about those symptoms. But yeah, they are they're not more severe. They're not more severe. This is the general impression from whatever articles you read from other places.
Okay, they are not severe. And Dr. Sahani, we don't, of course, know when the third wave will hit, but every time, there is a new variant of concern, especially, the question gets asked is, are our vaccines working? And if they are working, then why are people still getting infected? And if they are working, what is the sort of reduced efficacy that we are seeing? Do you see efficacy being reduced in the face of Delta Plus cases? We don't have too many of them, but that's how it begins, doesn't it?
No, see, if you go by the global evidence, the fact is that we do need to get a larger population under vaccination, because if we do not cover an adequate amount of population, you will not get herd immunity and you will not be able to step out on the streets. Yes. The second part of it is that, if you look at the example, we've all just finished watching Wimbledon and the Euro Cup. You got crowds there, absolutely. I would say I could compare them with any of the hill stations, but they were not wearing masks. So either we are going to reach a stage when our immunities will behave that any COVID vaccine, any COVID infection would be like any other cough and cold. And I have a feeling some part of what we are seeing now is a lot of people with, what we are calling upper respiratory tract infections might actually be COVID, because the phase 2 or the Delta variant is presenting only with cough, cold, and, a little bit of a sore throat. Those days of, loss of taste and severe chest heaviness, etc., is no longer being reported. So I have a feeling patients are underreporting. They're treating them as common cold and coryza, and we do need the vaccine to come in. And as far as the efficacy of the vaccine, I think all the data suggests that if you've taken the vaccine and you do get infected, the degree of infection or the severity of the infection would be significantly lower. So I think there is a case of continuing to vaccinate irrespective of what vaccine is available and as rapidly as possible, because that is really going to be the key to us coming back to some degree of normalcy.
Dr. Seth, a lot has been said about herd immunity. Of course, the aim of the government is to try and inoculate everyone in this country by the end of the year. But given that our vaccinations have dipped, the pace of our vaccination has dipped almost 60%. This week, I think we vaccinated some 30 to 40 lakh people, which is hardly enough. When do you see this herd immunity coming in? India is a very large country, 1.3 billion plus people.
Yeah, herd immunity, as Dr. Saini has already said it, that 80%, at least 70 to 80% people, if they get immunized or infected, they will get, they have antibodies and that will protect them. Now, herd immunity will definitely do one thing. Now, one thing, I just want to elaborate one point which Dr. Saini has very nicely raised, that if any vaccinated person will not suffer from any severe infection because he has got antibodies in his serum, but those antibodies they do not come out in the throat, because throat has got its local antibody production that is different, that is quite separate from the systemic antibody production. So that man can carry the virus in his throat, but replication will be subdued, but it will occur. That man, as Dr. Sani said, may suffer from a mild coryza or mild cold and cough, but not any severe infection. once that particular stage, I'm supposing now 80% people have got vaccinated, so virus will definitely die down because it will not get replication, more replication in individual. It will not get people without antibodies in which it can replicate, so it will die down. So that is the ultimate aim, and that is only with 70 to 80% people if they get
But
vaccinated, or 70 to 80%.
70 to 80%, either they get vaccinated or all of them, you're saying, have been infected with the virus, sir.
But that is let's not hope for that. Let's hope for that. But 70 to 80% get vaccinated. As it is, government has already vaccinated 38 crore people. Now, here I like to say that, and I like to raise one more point. Even a single shot of vaccine will definitely produce some antibodies and memory of antibodies. Our body God has given us this particular property that even one shot of vaccine will definitely induce a memory. And I'll quote it. I'll tell you something about which Dr. Jonas Salk, who first made polio vaccine. He was a second person in the world who made a vaccine after Jenner created the smallpox vaccine. Now, Jonas Salk was visiting my lab when I was in AIMS, and we just discussed about polio vaccine. And he told me that in Algeria, when he gave polio vaccine to children, 67% children after first dose produced antibodies and 33% did not produce any antibodies. And these 33% on the second dose, when he gave the second dose, they produced the antibodies to the same extent as the first person. That is, their reaction was similar to that. So this means they had the memory. So he said, so when he told me this, I did these experiments in animals using my HIV. At that time, I was working with herpes viruses and other viruses. And the same thing I did with HIV in monkeys. Same. And I saw that even after one dose, there was hardly any antibodies. But after second dose, there was a much better reaction. That means there was a memory. When I experimented myself, I did injected HIV in myself. I found that antibodies after the second dose was much better than what it was in the first dose. This means I had the memory. I did certain experiments even with the smallpox vaccine on myself. The smallpox vaccine I took when I was a child, when I was newborn. And that after 50 years, I took a second dose, and the reaction was similar as if I was taking a primary inoculation, primary injection. So that type of reaction is definitely possible even after one dose. So person even receiving one dose of vaccine will produce some antibodies, will be protected.
Will produce memory, but critical will be inoculating this entire country with 2 doses. That's the ideal situation that we are looking at, right?
That's ideal. Okay, fine. But what I am saying that one should not get worried even with the one dose.
Okay, don't get worried, but be careful. When you say don't get worried, doctor, the problem is everyone will say, "Chalo, hame to lag gaya vaccine."
They must wear masks. I said they must. I am vaccinated, but I still, whenever I step out of house, I wear mask. I am vaccinated. I've got antibodies in my system, but I do not. I always insist.
Dr. Sani, do you have an estimate on when this third wave will come? Everyone is saying it's inevitable. Countries around the world have seen multiple waves, and there is no reason why India will not see a third wave. In fact, the WHO is already saying that the beginning of a third wave is already being seen. So, the State Bank of India has said it will come to us as soon as August. You have other estimates, where the government is modeling and telling us that it will come by the end of the year, possibly in December. Any guesses on when it could happen, or do you think it's not a matter of guessing that it's here? It's somewhere here. It's beginning to begin, as it were.
According to Niti Aayog, Dr. Paul, Dr. V.K. Paul, he said on the news. The other day I came from the news also. Came to know from the news that within 6 weeks. He said 6 weeks. It may take 6 weeks or so, 6 to 8 weeks for the third wave to come. But I say one thing. If I vouch on this, and I can give it a guarantee that if 100% population of India or 80% population of India wear mask, the virus will die down, and I can take any bet from that.
The doctor said the problem is if you step out, you will realize that's not happening. Dr. Sahni, would you want to come in there? And I think you were also trying to make a point about the timing of the third wave.
No, so there is, the way the virus replicates and the epidemiological modeling which is done, it definitely indicates that there's going to be a third wave. Now, when the third wave comes is really based on how the community behaves towards the induction of the virus into their body. So the way, if we look at some of the pictures which you talked about, hill stations and religious places, if you look at them, then it's undoubted that we are going to get the third wave soon. The predictions as it goes was anything between mid-July to mid-August is when you would, be really peaking in the activities. And looking at where we stand, we won't be surprised that it won't happen, because the way the community has moved out, the way masking is no longer taking place, the way people are socializing, it's inevitable. And I think mid-August is somewhere which looks like a reasonable timeline when we would be looking at the third wave at almost its peak by that time.
Yeah, so I agree with Dr. Sahni. See, the Chief Minister of Uttarakhand at least did one very wise thing, that he cancelled Kanwar Yatra. That is one thing which will definitely, that would have been a good, like your the other religious functions, that could have really created it.
Yeah, the Kumbh, which was said, Dr. Kanwar, the Kumbh was said to be one of the drivers of the second surge. Thankfully, the Uttarakhand government, Dr. Kanwar, has of course cancelled the Kanwariya Yatra, but the fact is that Big Brother Uttar Pradesh has said, "Hum to kuch ban nahi kar rahe hain." It will still continue. How do you look at that? Given that we already have the example of the Kumbh Mela and what happened with the Kumbh Mela, that people came in and carried back the virus to their homes in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Delhi as well. But see, driving the second, governments would want to take panga with this virus. Dr. Kanwar, if you want to come in.
I'm not able to hear you. In fact, there's an audio issue.
Dr. Kanwar, there's been a problem with, I think, Dr. Kanwar's connection through this broadcast. Dr. Kanwar, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead, sir.
What is the question? I couldn't hear you.
Okay, I'll repeat my question. We had Dr. Seth talking about the fact that the Uttarakhand government has done a wise thing by cancelling the Kanwar Yatra. And the counter argument I was making is, but Uttar Pradesh hasn't. Uttar Pradesh is the big brother. A lot of pilgrims come from the state of Uttar Pradesh, and the Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister has said no ban for the moment. I'm asking you whether it perplexes doctors and medical professionals like you to see why a government would want to take panga with a virus like this.
They did that before. They did that before.
So the whole panga is with Dr. Kanwar's connection.
Well, they took the panga last time around by holding election rallies in Bengal, and also allowing the holy dip in Kumbh Mela. Those things were happening while the virus was going up in numbers and severity. In fact, there were a huge number of cases already in the country, and the government was taking no steps. It was perplexing to us. So what is happening? The first time there were 600 cases in the country, and Prime Minister announced lockdown. And this time around, there were lakhs of patients suffering, and they were busy there. They have their own agenda. They don't listen. They don't give a damn, frankly telling you. Let's be honest about it. So, but then there was a flack. There was a flack both nationally and internationally that they didn't take care. They didn't manage the COVID properly. Just Donald Trump got the flack for not acting aggressively against the virus. So I think this time they are being proactive. They should be proactive, and the good sense has prevailed. And I think, though my friend Tarun thinks that people haven't learned anything, and Dr. Seth thinks the same way. Well, frankly, what you see around in the country, at least in some parts of the country, that people haven't learned anything. But I said one thing which probably was missed, that the moment the virus takes an upswing, once it takes the upswing, everybody will get into their homes. You just watch it.
It's already beginning to happen, just by the way, in Kerala and Maharashtra. In Kerala, we've reported 15,000 cases. Of course, they're saying, this was all planned. This is a plateau that we are trying to stretch on so that our medical systems are not inundated, etc. But we are already beginning to see slowly cases rise up. There are some questions, and I hope all of you are okay taking questions. These are questions that have come to us from our viewers. Some of them, of course, are going to be repeats, but I'll ask for your patience. Dr. Tarun Sahni, if you want to take this question. What is the impact of COVID-19's Delta variant on someone who has an autoimmune condition? This is a question that is coming from a viewer.
The question of, people who are having any autoimmune disease, has been coming up repeatedly. Should they take the vaccine? Should they not take the vaccine? Because their immunities are compromised. I would say, which has been the government guideline as well, saying that, everybody needs to take the vaccine. And similarly here, a person who has an autoimmune disease is equally vulnerable. He may be marginally little more vulnerable, but he's equally vulnerable as rest of the population as far as getting the Delta or the Delta plus virus is concerned. So the precautions need to be the same. All our masking, washing our hands, and do gaz ki duri, those need to be maintained at every time. And especially if you have an autoimmune disease, you need to be a little extra cautious. But I don't think there is a higher risk as compared to the rest of the community.
Okay, Dr. Kanwar, this question is for you. As these COVID-19 variants keep coming up, will COVID-19 ever end, and will life ever get back to normal?
Yes, it will. It will get back to normal because the virus eventually would, it's like virus going into different streets. There would be a dead end in a street where it will die down. And in fact, most of the variations that happen with in mutations, the end result is that a few of them become really aggressive or more troublesome or more transmissible, more virulent. But majority of them, they just wither away, die down, sort of. Now, those which tend to outgrow, now I'll tell you something here. The scientists were perplexed. Why Delta became so much of a scourge in India, and then followed in in other countries. I mean, including Indonesia now. Because they thought there were more virulent strains lurking around than Delta. For example, B1.282 was one of them. So why not they have done the havoc that Delta was able to do? So this is something of an enigma, which is not very clearly established, stated, and demystified. But then, as you know, even in earlier days, when Delta Plus was AY1, which was named AY1 later, when that was first found out, discovered, sequenced, they thought, oh my God, it is going to be far more virulent, far more transmissible. My God, we already had enough with Delta. So if somebody tells me there is going to be this, the alarm bells go, But then just a few weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks later, today we feel convinced that if in 3 months' time, the Delta Plus was first found in March, and we are into 4 months. How many cases do we have? So Delta Plus practically has, it will peter away. Don't even worry about that. You should be thinking of some other variation that might come up, and we don't know about that. But then, eventually, as Tarun had pointed out earlier, you will have a situation where the host immunity to these different variants would be established enough, and the vaccination would have been given to 70 to 80% cases, that is the time, even if there is a partial immunity to some new variants, that would be enough not to push them into the hospitals. They might be treated at home, might be treated mildly, and might be a stage will reach when they should be like a coryza, as Tarun pointed out earlier. So that is eventually going to be the end result of this virus. And it will remain a sporadic disease which would keep coming, and probably it will be the one where you will need vaccination once a year.
Okay.
I'd like to add a few things.
Go ahead.
See, any in what the doctor Dr. Science said very correctly. What happens when any epidemic occurs? 85% people remain asymptomatic, as happened in this infection. They remain asymptomatic. They never had any symptoms. They produce antibodies also, right? In their system also there is antibodies. Now, in remaining 15%, 10% of them, that means up to 95%, additional 10% will have a very mild disease, some coryza, something like that, and they'll recover. And the remaining out of the remaining 5%, 3% will have a very severe disease, and 2% will have a moderate disease. So what happens that actually the antibodies will be there in most of the individuals, and the virus. And see here, unlike influenza virus, in this particular coronavirus, there is no natural host available. Only natural host, as I maintain, is natural host is Wuhan lab, from where it leaked out. Otherwise, there is no animal which is natural host of this virus. Unlike influenza virus, we have got natural host, we have got amplifying host there, we have got intermediate host there, influenza virus, for all. But here there is no other except for humans. So naturally, it will definitely die down. As he said, it will definitely die down once everybody, vaccinated, or it gradually, you will see in coming few years, it will die down. Now, if you take the example of influenza virus 1918, which first appeared in the medical literature, and after that particular epidemic of 1918, the next occurred in 1947. After so many years, because the natural host is some other animal.
Okay.
That is birds. Feral birds are the natural host, and pigs become the amplifying host. Here, we have got there's no other natural host. So it'll become like any other coronavirus of humans which you see in children. You have got 4 different types of coronavirus which you see in children, and they are very mild disease. Nobody bothers about them. So that's so this. As for a virologist, coronavirus is not a new thing, which we have I have studied when I was there in AIMS. I know that these are the coronavirus. We always consider coronavirus as a virus of no consequence, except for this one.
Okay, except for this one, and it has been a virus of way too much consequence. 4 lakh people killed in India only.
Yes.
Dr. Kanwar, I'll wrap this up in the next 3 minutes. But Dr. Kanwar, a question is coming from you, since you're a sleep specialist. The name has not been, the viewer hasn't put out their name, but they're saying that I got COVID-19, I recovered from the virus, but I find that my sleep pattern has gone completely haywire. Is this normal? Is this natural? This is not just happening with me. It is even happening with my partner who didn't get coronavirus.
Many reasons for that. It is true. We have seen many cases. And the disease probably directly doesn't affect the sleep center, but it is the anxiety. A lot of things that go along with that. Anxiety about yourself, about your family members, about your future, about your profession, about the days lost, or, all those things that go through the mind of people. Those people who have had milder disease, and I never saw those people coming with sleep complaints. But those who had severe disease, who almost saw death in their face because the disease was rapidly, going up in severity. You are on 1 liter oxygen, 2 liter oxygen now, and by evening you could be on 10 liter, by night you could be on 15 liter, and next day you could be on ventilator. We saw so many cases in the ICU like that. So those were the kind of cases when they keep learning about that, they keep seeing the television, the media. So that is playing on their mind all the time when they are sick, when they are may not be so sick, but they are worried that they can become so sick. So there was that cycle starts of anxiety for a couple of weeks, 3, 4 weeks, 4 weeks. Then it takes time for the sleep pattern to become normal. It takes it takes about a month or two to resettle properly without any medications.
Okay. Last question to Dr. Sahini. Dr. Sahini, we've dealt with this virus for the last 18 months now. We've had alpha, beta, delta plus, lambda, etc., etc. The Greeks will run out of alphabets, but I don't think the coronavirus variants are going anywhere. They'll only multiply. As a doctor, as a scientist, can you with some degree of confidence say now, okay, we understand this virus, we understand what it is doing to the human body, or is it still largely a mystery?
No, I think where we started 18 months ago, when this virus was introduced to the world, I think we were absolutely uninformed. From there, the past 18 months has given us a lot of confidence in saying that we understand the disease, we understand the pathophysiology, we understand the drugs which have to be used, we understand the precautions. Having said that, I think there is still a lot of areas which are evolving. And whenever a disease is evolving and treatment is evolving, no one can with confidence say that we are on top of the disease. We are definitely not on top of it. We have a fairly good and I would say a deep understanding of the virus, of the pathophysiology, of the treatment. But yes, there is still a lot which is unknown, and especially what is unknown is what variant will come in and how virulent will be the variant which comes in. And that we will have to watch out very carefully. Keep your eyes and ears open for all kinds of information which are coming in. The government has been very proactive this time of sharing knowledge, and I think we need to compliment the government for the way it has managed to keep everybody abreast of what is happening there. And of course, thanks to the media for keeping us aware. We know a lot, but there is still a lot to learn.
All right. Dr. Sani, thank you very much. Dr. Kanwar, thank you very much. And Dr. Seth, thank you very much. We had promised our viewers that we'd demystify the Delta Plus variant. There are a couple of things we know. You've told us that initial data seems to be suggesting. Yes, Dr. Kanwar, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Before you finish, I agree with Tarun, but there are a lot of things we don't know about this virus. In fact, a lot of things that we don't know about some symptoms, for example. And post-COVID and long COVID are examples of that. In fact, I'm conducting a national webinar for 2 hours on 20 July on this very thing, trying to demystify about 10 situations where, which we see in the post-COVID status. There is no book, no literature which has explained why it is happening. And so there are still a lot of things we don't know about it. So it's still a mystery in many ways. And enigma, it has been an enigma still in many ways. So those are the things which enigma that is going to be partially demystified, whatever is our knowledge at the moment. So we'll be discussing that next week.
See, as a virologist, I can say that even today, although we know we have controlled polio virus and smallpox virus, if you as a virologist, if you see these two viruses, we hardly know anything about these viruses. There are so many unknown areas in these two viruses, especially which we have controlled, which we do not know. And this new virus, coronavirus, what will happen to it? Again, we do not know. And this is much. See, I have worked with HIV, and honestly, I have worked with almost all the viruses in last 53 years. And I've worked with HIV, I made HIV vaccine, and I made everything. But there's so many dark areas which you hardly know. And that's much smaller virus than this virus. And this has
Correct.
got so many other things which we do not know.
Correct. So there's a lot we know about the virus in the 18 months, but there's a lot we don't know about the virus as well. I'm going to have to wrap it there. Dr. Seth, thank you very much. Dr. Kanwar, thank you very much. Dr. Sani, very much as well. About the Delta Plus variant, we ended up talking a very little about it because it is not a matter of concern right now. You're telling us it is not necessarily more transmissible or virulent than its parent, which is the Delta virus. Its symptoms don't seem to be any different. In any case, only 60, 70 people have been infected. And the vaccines are so far found to be effective against it. So those are the three things that we need to know about the Delta Plus variant. You've told us that. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. इसमें तो नेट पे आ गया, नेट पे तो